And so here's Japan is now also, by the way, that's the latest thing. Japan breaks with U.S. allies, buys Russian oil at prices above the cap. So now, can you explain this $60 a cap that the United States wants imposed on oil? But it doesn't work, right?
Well, no, none of these sanctions have worked very well. They are, at best, they are nuisances, and they can be expensive. But what the Russians have showed us, whatever the sanctions were, you can get around it. For example, if Russia cannot send, I mean, this is not rocket science. If Russia cannot send oil or gas, and that's basically what Russia shipped to Western Europe, the energy basis of the so-called German miracle was, and I don't want to take it away from the Germans, they're an industrial people and a productive economy, but half of that is BS, and the other half is Russian oil and gas at ridiculously low prices that allowed German goods to compete in the world because they didn't have to pay for the oil and gas. So the big sanction that was going to bring Russia to its knees and bring the war victory to Ukraine was to say to the Russians, we won't buy your gas, we won't buy your oil, and to drive the point home, blow up that pipeline under the water in the North Sea there that we all, our little James Bond adventure that we played out over there. All that the Russians did is two things. Number one, went to India, with whom they have a very good relationship, and the Indians buy virtually unlimited quantities of Russian oil. And at what price? Well, if they don't want to have a problem with the United States, they say $60 a barrel. Meanwhile, there's a $10 a barrel equivalent that is a new investment by India in Russian, who cares what it is. In other words, you get around it by having another invoice for the other $10 or the other $20 or the other 30. That's one way. Here's the second way. The cap, it doesn't apply if it's oil not from Russia. Okay, it's not so easy to tell where the oil comes from. So Russia ships the oil to, I'm going to pick a country. This is not a real story, just hypothetical. It ships it to Tanzania on the east coast of Africa. There the ship docks, pours the oil off the ship into a holding tank, and then 2 days later, a Greek ship arrives, takes the oil out of the tank, invoices the shipment of oil from Tanzania to Britain. Britain pays $80 to Tanzania. Tanzania turns around, takes a commission, and sends the rest of it back to Russia, which is where the oil came from. Let me remind everyone, you know how they learned to do all this? Because the United States has had an embargo and sanctions against the little country of Cuba for 70 years. And Cuba has had to figure out every conceivable way to get around it. And what they've figured out, they have shared in a very comradely way with everybody else, the Iranians and the others. So by now, these sanctions, they must have parties in Moscow, where they raise vodka for one another, laughing all the way to the bank as the United States goes through the theater of the sanctions, which are all supposed to have this terrible effect that we're still waiting to see.
So Japan has almost no fossil fuel of its own and relies on imported natural gas and coal for much of its electricity.
Beautiful, clean coal.
Beautiful, clean coal.
Terrific coal.
The Japanese, I did not know that. I thought they were such a forward-thinking people. They're relying on coal. Officials have said it would be self-defeating to give up access to the Russian liquefied natural gas because Russia could turn around and sell the liquefied natural gas to China anyway.
That's right. That's right.
So,
and the Chinese, people have to remember, the Chinese have 4 times the population of the United States. Right. India has 4 times. Together, that's 8 times. They're going to be able to absorb all the energy over decades to come from Russia. You are not solving your problems this way. And you have to eventually face it, because the alternative is that somebody crazy is going to figure out that maybe the military is the only way when all of these other things fail. There are already rumors in Europe that the war in Ukraine is going so badly for the West that they are now considering NATO troops on the ground to enter it. You know, and I mean, I don't know if that's more than a rumor or not, but it is circulating. And all I can do is shake my head the way I did when I learned that the British were going to have depleted uranium artillery shells. I mean, you are playing here with matches that could fry us all.
Go to jimmydore.com to see my new stand-up special, COVID Lies Are Funny. For only $10, you get to become a premium member, too. And come see us do our live shows. We're going to be doing stand-up comedy in Milwaukee, Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, New York, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.